Thank you for joining our seminar today on surviving the recession. We see signs all around us that we are in the midst of a recession. We're here company after company talking about layoffs, firing people, but nothing really strategic about reorganizing or setting out new goals and objectives. McKinsey did a survey in December, one of their CFO Pulse surveys. The top two findings were that they're concerned around interest rates and inflation. So how are they responding to this? Our proposal and our talk today is about the use of the Analytics Scorecard to support survival during times of recession, but equally important, preparing for the recovery, the growth that will occur post-recession. And that's what we're going to talk about today. But it's an interesting environment we live in. Will you survive this process? CFO Dive did a survey as well in December of 2022, and their findings are a little bit startling. 3.5 years is the average tenure for a CFO, shortest amongst the C-suite. On average, 56% of CFOs will turn over within 5 years. And this is further borne out by Russell Reynolds, the executive search firm that sees an uptick in turnover in the C-suite. So, will you survive? What's your tenure going to be? My name is Greg Dadarian. I'm the managing partner of Aegis Advisory Partners. We're a strategy and management consulting firm. I've spent the breadth of my 35 years in and around the finance function. Prior to setting up my own firm, I led Genpact CFO advisory business for over 6 years. And prior to that, I led Ernst & Young's financial services finance management practice across the Americas. Today, I'm joined by two colleagues, Robert Zwirling, who is the managing director of Aurora Predictions. Robert is focused on the content, the data, and the analytics and tools, the technology necessary to deliver effective decision-making for his clients. Additionally, Robert and his organization have built a technology enabler called Lights. So it's a tool that addresses and provides the sophisticated mathematical capabilities necessary to develop analytical insights. Our third colleague is Larry Mizell. Larry is the president of DecisionView, a data and analytics consulting firm. Larry's got a very strong and extensive background, working in industry as both a controller and CFO. He was a Big Four partner, leading a finance management practice, as well as an educator, as a professor at Columbia University. He provides his clients with decision useful information to help assist them all the way through from concept through use. And as you can see from the slide, Robert and Larry are the authors of the books that you see presented here. Each of these works is thought-provoking and groundbreaking and really drives true insight around analytics. The three of us together bring decades of experience to this topic, from a focus on management information through analytics, and we have the practical experience delivering analytically driven finance management information for our clients. So let me set the stage. Executives are not prepared to survive the recession. Why do we say that? Well, the normal reaction, and as I said, we're seeing it today, is to cut cost straight away, right? IWG in September of this past year called out that 97% of executives have started implementing or are planning to implement cost-cutting measures. Our view is it's a knee-jerk reaction. It's not thoughtful. It's a focus on headcount reduction and not a thoughtful process about where in your business environment should you be investing or reducing your spend. It's not really built on insight. And survival today is dependent upon making the right decisions now, and as I pointed out earlier, setting up for the rebound that is to come. Critically important. It has to be an and statement. Address issues today, prepare for tomorrow. Be smart about your decision making and where you will fine tune your business. Lack of preparation is going to result in poor performance. And I think it brings into question your personal survival. Now, why do we say this? Cost cutting isn't sustainable. Deloitte did a piece of research a few years back, and their findings pretty interesting. 63% of the firms they've researched were unable to meet and sustain their cost-cutting goals. Think about that. They're not able to sustain it. Everyone sets out with good intentions. They do some cost cutting and they start to get fat again, right? We're doing it again. It's happening all around us right now. It's happened again, right? The approach is doomed to fail. Traditional cost cutting is not the way to approach this. You might survive the recession, but you're not going to be prepared for the recovery that's going to come tomorrow. And we all know this is cyclical. It moves in cycles. You have to be prepared for the recovery. We have a quote here from Chris Gainley from Gartner. Basically points out that top performing executives, you don't cost cut your way to strategic relevance. When you think about what's done in the marketplace today, many organizations have spent substantive sums of money to generate and deliver an effective reporting environment. At least that's what they believe. Our findings are a little bit different. In fact, through some research, we found that only 18% of business decision makers. So if you're a finance professional, your clients within your own organization, 18% of them believe the information they're receiving today is decision useful. The con to that, 82% do not. It's a massive number. 82% of your customers are dissatisfied. They're not getting the information they need to execute their responsibilities. The reporting that is done today provides an inconsistent and insufficient level of information as it relates to performance measurement. The reporting is backward looking. It's historical. It's historical. And it does not provide the dials and the gauges necessary to anticipate what's in front of the organization. So you don't have dashboards that provide real insights about your business. What's more concerning is the next statistic, that 22% of finance professionals believe the information they provide today is in fact useful for their business colleagues. So 78% do not. So you have 82% who said it's not meeting the need. You have 78% of the individuals responsible for delivery saying it's not meeting the need. And this is an area of substantive spend within most organizations. And so the finance teams are missing the connection. They're not providing the right level of information and insight necessary to support business decision making. what is needed and what we put forward today is that businesses need to measure the analytics that are driven, businesses need the information necessary to evaluate performance and do that in an unbiased way, using analytical information that is not biased. Historical data is what we've always done. That is a bias. Analytics, and what we're going to talk about next, the Analytics Scorecard, is unbiased. And with that, Larry, I'd like to
I have a question, Greg.
Okay.
The question I have is, with the headwinds of recession seem to be blowing stronger and stronger, and our premise is don't only survive the recession, but come out on the other side and grow in recovery. What is the implication of this data to the ability to recover and grow after we survive the recession?
Well, I actually think it involves the decisions you're making while you're entering into this recession or while you're in the recession itself, which is making informed decisions about where to invest, where to maintain, where to divest. Right? Those are, and you're looking at, and you need a lens into how your business is performing, what you anticipate, so forward looking, is going to happen to those businesses during recession, post-recession, as influencers to invest here, maintain here, and divest.
Good. Thank you, Greg.
Yep. Larry, please take us through the scorecard.
The treasure map. Why are we using this particular image, if you will? Well, there's an old adage that you cannot manage what you don't measure. So if you want something different, you have to do something different. So we use the treasure map image since surviving the recession and positioning for growth recovery is like finding treasure. Well, how do you get there and obtain the rewards that are both critically important to the business? Well, we believe that the Analytics Scorecard is your treasure map. Let me show you the why and the how. The Analytics Scorecard is an extension or the third generation of the Balanced Scorecard, or that was developed many years ago. So on the left side of your slide is your classic strategic themes, your KPI, key performance indicators, and divided or segmented into 4 dimensions, the classic dimensions of the Balanced Scorecard: financial, customer, process, learning, and growth. What we have done, and we've written about this in our book that Greg referenced earlier, is we said, what is the flaw in the Balanced Scorecard that today's capabilities can improve upon? And the biggest flaw was the relationship, or those arrows were cause and effect relationships, but they would determine based on asking individuals the question, what do you think is the relationship? And very often, and we don't have time in this session to demonstrate, but that, as Greg mentioned before, bias comes into play so that what is needed is an unbiased assessment or analysis of those cause and effect relationships. Let me take you through an example of how the scorecard operates. And in that example, you'll get an appreciation of the value of analytics. First, increasing customer satisfaction. It has a real impact on customer churn. If you reduce customer churn, you will increase top line revenue growth. So what does analytics do? As the red outline demonstrates, that the relationship between customer satisfaction rating and customers and increased customer satisfaction are correlated with churn. Well, you may be saying, well, I just stated the obvious. Well, I did. But what I did is I validated that cause and effect relationship. There's a high correlation and it has an inverse relationship. What do we mean by inverse? As you increase customer satisfaction, inversely, you will reduce churn. Well, the next column to the right, threshold, that's very insightful, because what we're saying is you got to get above a certain level of customer satisfaction to impact churn. And in this hypothetical example, we've set it at 80%. And the impact gives you a sense of what each additional percentage improvement might have on improving satisfaction and therefore reducing churn. Well, if we go to the strategy map and number 2, which is reduce customer complaints. Well, if we reduce customer complaints, that should improve our customer satisfaction. And now we see that there's a high and inverse relationship between, if we correlate reducing complaints and increasing customer satisfaction. So now we have one more insight that has been analytically validated. If we go to reduce complaints, number 3, if we go to the next, please continue. And we see the number of billing errors, and we attempt to correlate billing errors to reduce complaints. Well, we're finding that there is a low correlation or very poor correlation. So what we're finding, and that's insightful unto itself, is that by that reducing errors, there may not be enough errors that have caused cause complaints. And so the implication of that to the business is that you might not want to invest in reducing errors, because incrementally, marginally, it will not have the impact on reducing complaints, because that's not the source of complaints. Something else is, and we would need to find that. And the scorecard helps you, again, find the treasure, looking for the treasure on the treasure map. So if we conclude, what we find is that surviving during the recession and growth post-recession, the analytical scorecard, ASC for short, has the opportunity and to improve profits by 15 to 30% or more. That's not a made-up number. That's what we've experienced. And that's what we've experienced to date.
Larry, obviously, I'm very in tune with this. I think it would be important for the audience to understand Where's the heavy lifting? Where's the legwork in this process in developing an analytics scorecard?
Yeah, that's a great point, Greg. And if you have to live it to appreciate it. Well, two things. One, you need to be able to collect data from disparate systems. Oftentimes, the client will be able to extract it into a series of Excel spreadsheets. Well, if you don't have the right tools, you've got a lot of spreadsheets and a lot of data and very little capability to run the kind of analytics, correlation, Monte Carlo, etc., that is needed to do the analysis. We are fortunate that we've got a tool through Aurora called LightZ, which is a low no-code capability, which has the mathematics already programmed into it. So Robert and I recently are doing a project for a client, and one afternoon, and Robert, I think you appreciate this, we must have run a dozen correlations just trying to see if there are relationships, and it's one touch. We just identify the relationship and then run it against the data set that we've built. So having the right tool really is going to make the difference. It's the old adage, if I'm trying to build a chest of drawers, I can't just do it with a hammer. So you need the right tool. And in this case, the right tool to be able to do the analytics is Lights, because it's so low code and cost effective. I'm going to turn to Robert now, who'll share some examples of success use cases where we've had success. And Robert?
You're on mute, Robert.
Yeah. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Greg. Okay. So in the words of if I could paraphrase Shakespeare, to ASC or not to ASC? That is the question. And we're going to start with our friend, the Grim Reaper. So I'm going to go through three cases. The first case is $1.5 billion retailer. And their business is in trouble and has been in trouble for several years. And what do? They have all the reporting that you can imagine, but it's the traditional reporting, the types of reporting that Greg had discussed earlier. It's hindsight reporting, it's hindsight dashboards. There's obviously bias in them. And they also brought in top tier consultants who did what, again, Greg described as traditional things: cut costs, close stores. And the result was that they're, pending a Chapter 11 filing right now. So this is to, if you will, put an exclamation point on Greg's metrics that he provided before, in terms of that our traditional reporting, our traditional dashboards, our hindsight looking, doesn't give us any insights, and those insights are necessary to make the right decisions. And the right decisions aren't always cut cost. They're cutting the right cost. In some areas, you have to increase cost, but you won't get that, you won't know that without having the analytics behind it. The second example is $1 billion CPG manufacturer. And this manufacturer during the pandemic had just super duper big growth, explosive growth. And so they went on this large CapEx spending campaign to build out more manufacturing capacity. Again, traditional reporting, hindsight looking reporting, the good times, let the good times roll, and they'll continue to roll. This party is not going to end. Party like it's 1999. And well, it did end. Post-pandemic, the bubble burst, and now they're overextended. So capital that is desperately needed, for example, in marketing, to maintain positions and shelf space and all the other things like that aren't available. Now, we're not going to continue anymore with our friend, the Grim Reaper. We're going to go back to Larry's treasure chest, and that's case number 3. And there's a $4 billion high-tech manufacturer, and they have a strategic goal. One of their strategic goals is to grow revenue 2x, but they had biased traditional hindsight reporting that they conflated, as most people do, with KPIs. And when we met with them, it was like, well, yeah, though it's very nice, but you know, how are you going to get to 2x growth with your reporting? How have you combined what you measure with what you manage to achieve that 2x growth? And that's when the Analytics Scorecard was brought in, because we are migrating from that traditional hindsight only looking reporting, which, by the way, you need. That is what we call informational reporting, and it's foundational and it's informational, and you need it. So you don't replace it. You add on to that with utilizing analytics on the data to build, as Larry gave you an example before, an analytics scorecard that actually identify the KPIs for strategic, unbiased measures that impact performance. Where do I go? What should I invest in? What shouldn't I invest in? Quick example. There's an area that strategic area of customer satisfaction and customer growth dynamics. And one of the KPIs in there is to get to order processing and have what they call touchless order processing. And so we gathered the data, we ran the data through lights, and we had good news for them. Basically, that they have very good control over their order processing, and that as their business has grown and the volume of orders has grown, it's not correlated with what they call pushbacks. In other words, places where the order fails for a variety of reasons. So they have had great control over their pushback and their ability to process orders as orders have grown with the same staff and with the same technology. So this was an excellent find that says we don't need to invest particularly in this area because we're doing a good job, but the investments that we might want to make in this area will help us relieve some of the people's bandwidth so that we can reallocate them to higher impact areas. So here's an example of how the scorecard actually can deliver the news. Sometimes it's very good news, sometimes it isn't. But in this particular area, it was very good news, and how to better allocate their resources. So next is to distinguish that the Analytics Scorecard is what we call, it's a lifesaver, not a swimming lesson. You take swimming lessons, you go to the pool and you go there and you spend the next all summer learning to swim and learning to swim better and right. This is not that. ASC is a lifesaver. We've got to get to it. We've got to find out what we do. We've got to find out how we can do it so that we can move the levers, turn the dials that are going to impact our performance. And the key area of it is it's rapid. And one of the reasons it's rapid is because we do use lights. It's the enabling technology, and Larry gave you an example of that, so that we can absorb data quickly, we can do the analytics quickly, and we can develop it into a strategy map quickly, like you saw that Larry walked us through. The second thing is it's effective. It's effective at revealing insights. Very, very important, because insights enable the unbiased decisions that we need to achieve our goals. If our goals are 2x revenue, how are we going to get there? Going back to the example I just gave you, one of the things that they were measuring as a KPI before was travel costs. Well, how are travel costs getting them to 2x revenue growth? They weren't. But the KPIs that we develop now give them the points of measurement that do impact the growth. And the third area, it's economical. If you can do something rapidly, then much to the chagrin of Greg and Larry, who are consultants, and they get paid by their time, you don't need as much of their time. So one of the things is rapidity reduces cost and makes it all economical.
That's all three of those points are pretty important. As you think back to kind of your client situation and kind of key learning, what would you say was the biggest learning that they got from deploying the application scorecard?
That's actually a super great question, because one of the things immediately that we found when we started the project was that the one I referred to is that everyone, they were all great people, and they all were, as most companies are, working in stovepipes. And they were doing this work and they're saying, I want to be part of the strategy, but I don't know what the strategy is. I assume we have a strategy. I just don't know what it is. And I don't know what I'm doing, if what I'm doing is helping the strategy or hurting the strategy. And I don't know how what I'm doing is affecting anyone else in my operational area. And so one of the things they learned right up top when we do the analytics scorecard is what the strategy is, what we're trying to accomplish, when we're trying to accomplish it, how what they do in their area affects strategy, and how it also interrelates with other people's activities. So they now have a horizontal bottom-up view of strategy and a east-west view of how everyone interacts and feeds to build into the strategy. So that was one of the big learnings. Probably the biggest learning that we do when we go into the doing any of these analytic scorecards is that upfront, how does this all fit together?
Yeah.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks.
So ASC is a more informed approach. We're not doing away with your traditional dashboards, remember, because they're informative, but we're now adding the analytics, the unbiased analytics, and we're looking forward. We also get the opportunity to develop and maintain multiple scenarios. So we get into the process now of anticipating the future versus simply reacting to the future when it happens. And that's what happened, what Greg was referring to when he was talking about it. Because we have traditional reporting, because we're doing the same thing the same way, we get the same reaction. Okay, cut costs, cut headcount, those kinds of things. And as Larry walked us through, is how we take the analytics scorecard, look into the relationships, look into the future, so that we can be proactive and know where we should act in order to impact our business. So the analytics scorecard sets the path to optimize and prioritize cost decisions that lead to growth. Cost, growth. And I normally don't quote Bill Gates, but in this case, I think he said something right, which is you can achieve incredible progress if you set a clear goal and find a measure that will drive progress toward that goal. And that's spot on, because that's what the analytics scorecard is about. So, like most people, you find yourself at a fork in the road, and What we've talked about is that there are current reports and gut feel that is biased that you do today. And there's cost cutting in response to those reports and gut feel that you do today. And hopefully what we've shown are those don't work, or certainly executives and managers are terribly uncomfortable about what they're getting. So the real opportunity to look forward and to control your future and make your future happen is through the Analytics Scorecard, because that really not only increases your company's chance of survival, but your individual chance of survival, as well as a recession potentially looms. And if that's important to you, and if you'd like to talk more about that, we'd be more than delighted. We'd be honored to open that dialogue and have that talk and talk to you about a free proof of concept to do that. And to get in touch with us, myself, Robert Zwirling, or Greg Dedurian, or Larry Mazzell, here's our contact information. Also, there's the book, AI-Enabled Analytics for Business. This is a tremendous groundbreaking book that talks about how to implement analytics for business. So again, a great reference source for you. So for myself and for Greg and for Larry, we thank you for attending. We thank you for listening. We hope this was of great value, and we would be delighted to talk to you. Have a great day.